No, we're gonna go with no camera? Sounds good. I will call the work session to order. We do not have camera to stream, but we'll show the presentation and you'll be able to hear our voices. So great. First item on the agenda is the budget discussion. Rick? Well, there, gonna ask us both. Repeat. We keep going.
All right. Good evening, board. Tonight, we're going to go over our first presentation. We'll be going over the 5-year CIP that we are proposing. As we are going over this, we'll look at each fund that has projects. We'll look at some unfunded projects. And then also, after each fund, I want to have some board discussion. We're getting at a point where projects are starting to cost quite a bit more. We've been doing some shuffling. It's not creating a fund balance in some of these sales tax funds. So what I want you to keep in mind as we are talking about that though, is when we say we're going to start a project in 26, it may go over to 27. So if we're close to going under on a fund, more likely we want it because we want to be able to accomplish a huge project all in 1 year. So just keep that in mind. But I do want to have good discussion and get some board priorities after each one. All right, just kind of a quick overview of the process that we've gone through. Starting roughly in January of each year, we start talking with each department. That's usually initiated by me, asking the department to start gathering their information. And then that leads into one-on-one discussions. And then as we get more and more involved, we start doing some prioritization, start involving Cynthia and Gina, and come up with a 5-year budget through that process. July, obviously, July 1st, we are reviewing this with you. This won't be the only time you see this until October. This will be talked about when we're talking about the budget. We have a 9-month in August. We have a first round of budget discussion in September. So this won't be the only time you see the CIP. And that just went blank. All right, just looking at some highlights here. Like I initially said, staff has worked together for months on this. We look at reimbursement. We look at the projects that have reimbursements. Chuck has done a wonderful job of going out and getting reimbursements either through Mark, federal, state. Chuck, as we'll see here very shortly, has done an excellent job with many projects. And we expect that to kind of continue. No pressure on Chuck, but we have some of these projects that have increased in value so much that we are going to need additional funding to get them accomplished. And here's what I was just talking about. Let me go back. Looking at all the projects that have some kind of reimbursement. As you can kind of see here, this list has been growing year after year. Right now, the reimbursements are just over $6 million. And that's divided by all those projects, which the total for those projects, which is in that total project estimate, is just over 15 million. So we're just over 8 million net for the city based on these projects listed and the reimbursements that we will receive, are paid to receive. And you can kind of see down at the bottom there, those two reimbursements are anticipated only. We will definitely be asking for more, but hope that is at least the minimum that we would receive. Looking at the all-inclusive list for the 5 years, there is totals on this last page, but I'll just make note here that the 26 project list totals 12,700,000. That is quite a task. A lot of this is in the water and wastewater fund, which, if you remember, we anticipate doing some outside financing for those.
And if I can jump in real quick, Rick mentioned earlier also that, we slot expenditures in years. Remember that we don't always complete those, so some of those spill over. And so as we look at the fund balance chart, we want to keep that in mind as well. But we have issues we need to be looking at and managing there, but we've several years in a row had out years look like we will have pretty significant issues, and because of timing, a lot of those are delayed. Just want to keep that in mind. We still need to prioritize the projects.
Then in 27, as of right now, we have a total of just shy of 13 million. In 28, we have a little over 6 million. In 29, it is 16.7 million. And in 30, it is 17.9 million. Those are obviously some estimates there for the water plant expansion. But we fully expect it to be at least that 15 million at that point. Moving on to the general fund. Each one of these funds will start off with just looking at the 2025 and seeing a status of where we're at with those projects from 2025. We have the wayfinding signage in 25 in the general fund. We have slated 100,000. We are right now in the planning stage, and we do anticipate starting this in 25. These charts that you'll see here when we're talking about 2025, these will be very important to Chuck and I as we get closer to the end of the year, to look to see what would be carried over to hopefully avoid as many budget amendments as possible. Looking at the proposed general fund, in the retreat, we talked about getting a lot of the wayfinding done in 2027. I have highlighted there, anywhere there's a highlight on the future slides is where there's been changes. Many times it's due to an increase in cost. This is due to, we used to have 100,000 spread all the way out there year after year. So now we have it all under 2027. For the general fund, as I mentioned, we're going to talk when applicable if there's any unfunded CIP project list. This is the list we have for the general fund. We have the police department building, city hall renovation, and that would be after the police exits. Streets and Parks Recreation Facility building, and the purchase and installation of tornado sirens. These are all projects that we have on the back burner. We haven't associated a cost with them yet, but we know that there are big projects that will have to be handled here in the next 5-10 years. All right, moving on to the Transportation Sales Tax Fund. Looking at current CIP for the Transportation Sales Tax Fund, the first two will begin in September. We would anticipate those would be done by the end of 25. Then we move to the commercial street and sidewalks. That has begun. We anticipate that to be done in 25. And then we also have that mark reimbursement for commercial streets. And then the First and Bridge roundabout, we have 50% of the engineering in this fund. We have started, we do anticipate roughly 70% complete by the end of the year, fiscal year. All right, a lot of yellow highlights on this one. Most of these are increases to costs that we have recognized at this point. The annual asphalt overlay program, we have a couple large housing areas that are going to increase our cost. Also with the annual sidewalk replacement program, that has also been increased. And then the Dundee and Richardson have been increased. And then the First and Bridge roundabout construction, that is a very large increase from what we projected last year. And this would, like the roundabout, this would be one area that we would be pushing for additional funding. So what does that do to our fund balance? Looking at that, that pushes us below zero for 26. And then with that roundabout, it takes us down to 2.4 million, under zero. So what I'd like to kind of do here is I'm going to go back to this project list and hopefully have just a little bit of discussion. What are priorities? Unfortunately, all these have reimbursements, the big dollar ones, and those are the ones that we would love to accomplish and take advantage of getting additional outside funding. But there is going to have to be some discussion. And like both Cynthia and I mentioned, the roundabout in 27 probably wouldn't be completed in 27. So that's going to be pushed out and spread.
And Rick mentioned the outside funding. I want to have Chuck kind of speak to that a little bit, because that is one thing when we have grant funds, we have timelines behind those projects. And so that funding, we risk loss of the funding if we don't complete those in certain timeframes.
And what's the level of certainty on the traffic light?
So where we're at right now is I have a proposal from BG to help us start on the cost share agreement with MoDOT, the application. And that's a 50-50 program. And it's only a $5,000 cost to get them started on that. We plan to execute that so we can get started finding the funding, getting the cost share, and then what we would do is get into the engineering agreement to get it designed. So the construction, is in 27, after the design, so, what I've heard from MoDOT is they don't get enough applications for their cost share, and they're looking for projects.
But even with that, it still takes, last time we did a light, it took a lot longer than we thought, right, Jack? We did the marketplace one. Took a while.
Yeah, it'll take, by the time they do the plans and the review through MoDOT and everything, it'll be a year.
It'll be more likely at 28.
It could potentially be. I mean, we can push
We have
out.
to spend it. I mean,
Yeah,
that's one that I doubt we'll be able to spend it all in 27, even if it got approved and going.
well, yeah, then you gotta go through the bid and everything else. So, yeah. Yeah, so if we bid it late in 27, it'd filter into 28. The First and Bridge roundabout, that was the very first application I made to Mark when I
Yeah.
got here. And that was before COVID,
Yeah.
and prices are just crazy at this point.
Right.
Um,
But also there's a lot of municipalities that can't afford to even do their projects, so there might be
Right.
more money on the table to do the projects that do have some funding behind them. So,
I've already broached the subject that we need some additional funds. You know, you gotta
Yeah.
work the group. You know, and that's a couple years out, so I mean, I think we have a good chance to get some more funding on that, but
but I think on that one, if it's not closer to 50-50 or us, it's not a high priority compared to 180th and some of the other roundabouts we've talked about. I mean, with getting the grate out of there, it seems to flow okay now. People aren't slamming on their brakes to not break a tire on the grate. So, I mean, it seems to flow a little better. There's not a lot of traffic going up Hilltop anyway, but
no, yeah.
I mean, if the developer was doing something with that west side land, I think it'd be a higher priority, but I think going into the lake and other places are a higher priority.
So those projects haven't even been applied for
Yeah,
yet.
they're fuller, yeah, they're farther down the line.
Yeah,
Right.
so they're, you know, they'll be applied for. We just went through the round, so I think they'll be calling for projects in 27.
Yeah, I think if we don't get at least 50% or, closer to
Yeah, that,
50% on that one, we probably can push it off.
you know, you just don't know.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna have to wait and see and, you
I mean,
know,
when it was-
ask the question.
When it was half that price, it was a different story, but
Yeah, and I don't necessarily disagree with the mayor, but at the same time, I want to keep pushing on the pedal.
yeah.
Does that make sense? If we have an attitude or a stance that, well, it's MoDOT and we'll maybe get around to it. I mean, keep pushing.
Yeah,
I'm saying prioritize the light
Right.
over the First Street roundabout.
100%, 100%. That's
I
why I
mean,
said
if
I
we're
agree
gonna
with him.
spend the money, get the light done.
Yeah.
Light done tonight.
And the
Well-
roundabout can wait.
And there's some development, obviously that I think BG is getting ready to move into their space. I think that that developer is talking about some additional, I think there are businesses all up and down there.
Mhm.
I've heard from them. And so, yeah, I want to make sure that we press down on the pedal, and MoDOT recognizes that they got beat up in Jeff City this last year pretty badly.
Mhm.
And I think they're trying to do what they can to mend fences with legislators. And it sounds like it's a positive that we can maybe push for that cost share. I just want to make sure we don't let off the pedal.
yeah, I don't think it'll be a problem. We just gotta go through the process.
Yeah, I think Dundee, I mean, Dan, you probably drive that road more than anybody in this room. It could probably be pushed a little bit for their overlay too, if we had to. I know, and not Cedar Lakes, Forest Oaks, that one we're doing this year, that one
That one next year.
needs some issues.
That one's next year.
Yeah, next year, that one has some issues, sorry. Tony.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, in the Dundee project, we were gonna bring to the board at the next board meeting, a contract to get the engineering for the stormwater
Yeah.
done.
Yeah,
Good.
so but if we just get the engineering for stormwater now, we won't be ready for overlay in 26 probably.
Yeah, should be. That's the goal.
I know there's no magic
The goal.
8 ball of shaking it and saying what
goal.
the price is going to be. I mean, what are other municipalities doing? I don't know if Jack
not
or
doing the
you,
work.
or are they just doing the same thing? We're taking it as it comes, and when we bid it, and then just know that it's going to be an increase because of materials and labor and everything else.
Some things are coming in high, some things are coming in under.
Yeah, and I wanna say, I wanna try and be conservative in these numbers so that we're not like we did with Streetscape Phase 3. Oh, we can't award it because we don't have the money. So these numbers should be conservative based on, you know, they're not the old numbers. That's why Rick's having a problem trying to balance this. Because I've moved everything up because prices are coming in so high.
Yeah.
But hopefully they'll come in below what we've got on here.
But also, I think if you budget, we talked about this before, if you budget 500,000 in asphalt one year and nothing the next year, you might be able to do a little more, like with Harbor
Mhm.
View, we could only do half of it or a third of it or whatever. If we would have taken 2 years of budget, we maybe could have just knocked the whole thing out and been done with it. But, I mean, I think it's okay if we do some of that too, if we know we can get a whole subdivision done in 1 year. And
Well, but like in Harborview, sometimes you don't need to do the rest of
Yeah.
that subdivision. I mean, we did the worst areas. I know the other isn't as nice, but it's maintainable.
Yeah.
They've done some additional crack sealing. You know, when you do the street program, you want to fix the roads that you can fix affordably.
Yeah.
Forest Oaks, we've asked for additional funding on that one because there's a lot of issues up there. And we want to get them all addressed. I mean, there's storm sewer, which we got to do first. And then there's sidewalk issues and there's all the overlay issues. So, the curb and gutter issues up there too.
Is that, and is the streets because of not using flowable fill that we're requiring now with a lot of the
There
dips,
was-
or
I don't think there was any compaction of anything up there.
so that's why it's all dropping?
The storm sewers weren't compacted up against the inlets, so the sidewalks are dropping, same thing with the curbs, and then the street settles, and we found some, kind of like in your neighborhood, where the storm box is set up on brick, but there's only 4 bricks in the corners, and the ground is washing underneath
Wow.
the lid in the box.
Well, thank goodness we
So-
inspect that stuff now.
Yes, yes, and then I don't think there was any subgrade under that road either, so it's probably gonna be, hopefully it won't end up being Rock Creek. But it could. And Rock Creek was 650,000. Just to get
3 years
that thing.
ago.
Yeah. Yeah, and we didn't know that until we went up there and milled it and the milling machine fell through. And then you just gotta deal with it. So
Well, good
we
thing-
hope we've
Good thing
got
Diamond
enough
Crest
in
has
there.
some concrete streets. Right?
Yeah, it's almost like a perfect storm. It's like these things were not, there wasn't a lot of oversight in the past, so we're now having to deal with that. Prices are increasing. We've got a list of
Yeah,
projects. It's
Smithville's not unique. I mean, I don't know exactly when Forest Oaks was done, but it's probably in the 70s, 80s.
90s.
90s?
Yeah.
Well, should have known better by then, but I mean, I've been in other communities, put it on compacted dirt, and then you just it's evolved over years, and now treated subgrade, watch that compaction, flowable fill. Um,
Well, at least you know where the sewer lines are at.
we do.
It's the stormwater lines.
So I don't know, Rick, you're probably still looking for an answer, is that right? Are you?
So,
Yeah.
So let's just look at the chart one more time. So in 26, I'm showing just getting under. And then of course, 27 with the roundabout. So if we flip back here and look at the project list again, what I'm kind of hearing is we want to get done with Richardson Street.
Yes.
Signal. And this is something Chuck and I have talked 1,000 times on. We start that engineering mid-year, a third of the way through the year. It may not get complete. And then we have some cost savings, keeping us with the fund balance. And then obviously that pushes 27, not getting a whole 1.2 done in 1 year. And then we're talking about First and Bridge roundabout, kind of shelving that unless we get more funding.
Yep. Jack, any update on, I know they had it posted for a while, the expansion of the library housing and getting that road through? Okay. So still not approved from the state, yeah. Gotcha. Well,
So with respect to the roundabout, though, at First and Bridge, we do have a contract, an agreement with MoDOT.
yeah,
We are to obligate the funds in 27, otherwise we lose them. So we will work diligently to see if we can't offset some of that, but I wouldn't throw that project out yet.
Yeah,
Because we do have that agreement, and if we can slide, but if we're not intending on doing it, they're gonna take that money back, so.
Yeah.
And then Raymore's gonna get it, or Gladstone, because they're all wanting them.
right. But also, and also that's,
But we'll work toward getting some more.
gotcha.
This is also a fund with revenue that highly tied to sales tax, so.
Yep.
We are predicting sales tax to relatively be flat for next year, but we could be surprised like we were this year, so.
Sounds
Right.
good.
I think we got our marching orders with transportation.
Just don't landscape the roundabout until year 3, Chuck, and, you know.
All right, here's just a couple quick pictures of the 2025 street maintenance program and the sidewalk replacement program. Kind of a before and after in the Harbor View neighborhood. Moving on to capital improvement sales tax fund. 2025 projects, we have the annual transfer for debt service payments. That I will be making that in 25. I will be making that shortly now. Riverwalk and trail engineering is in process, and the easements have begun. Downtown streetscape, as well as the reimbursement, is complete. And then we have the First and Bridge. This is the other half, the First and Bridge engineering. And again, we expect that to be roughly around 70% complete by the end of this fiscal year. And then Second Creek sidewalks, it is in process, and just like the Riverwalk and Trail, easements have begun. All right, looking at the 5-year outlay, our proposed outlay for CIP. Again, quite a bit of yellow on this one. Most of them are due to increases. With the Riverwalk and Trail, that also increases our reimbursement as well. But all of these in the capital improvement sales tax fund is almost all strictly due to increases in cost. And again, those down at the bottom, 180th and Eagle and Hope Lane roundabout, those are all far out projections, kind of on the back burner, but still in our mind. So what does this do to our fund? This definitely takes us down. Again, this is almost just like transportation sales tax. It's taken us below zero almost immediately with these increases in projects. Pretty steadily around 800,000 to get us through 2030. So kind of looking at this project list, you know, again, all these projects won't get done in the year that's necessarily slated, but we do have those reimbursements that are tied, and sometimes there is a timeline on those, so we might be pushing on some of those. Getting to the first year of 2026, obviously the biggest expense there is the Second Creek sidewalks. And we do project not completing or no, I'm sorry, that's just 70% of that cost in capital improvement sales tax.
Rick, you said the yellow is all cost increases?
Almost all of these are cost increases on the capital improvement sales tax fund.
Okay, so for example, on the Riverwalk, in 2027, the Riverwalk, and trail construction is showing 670 with the reimbursement of 420. That 670, I guess what I'm looking at is the reimbursement matching the rate of increase?
Not necessarily. We can put the reimbursement to the fund that needs it the most. And this is our current projection for the capital improvement sales tax fund. So as you can kind of see in 2026 with the River Walking Trail, that reimbursement is 100%. The reimbursement went down, and Chuck, you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but we have 900,000 for reimbursement. And that's just how it got divided up between the 2 years. We knew 26, we were gonna need the money in there, so.
Because we likely won't get the bills all in 26, or
Right,
it
right.
comes,
And
it trickles in and paying the invoices and all that stuff.
We
Yep.
had this year with Streetscape. I was doing or making payment just to make sure we got reimbursed first at times.
Do we have all the invoices now for that?
We do.
Finally?
We are.
We finally get all the ones for the pump station out at the lake. This took a long time to get in.
So again, I'll do kind of what I did on transportation. Kind of look at this and know that we're roughly 46,000 negative in 26. And then we shoot up to 900,000 for the next couple of years. Going back and looking at this, this is one fund where there are so many variables that could happen. So it's really hard to sit here and say, oh, let's just go slower on Second Creek sidewalks. That could happen not just automatically with the way these projects go. But looking at this is just one area that finance will definitely be keeping an eye on. Making sure that we are not going negative in these funds in the future years. I don't know if there's a whole lot of wiggle room other than those funds those projects just not getting completed in the year they're slated to.
In Pope Lane, we still haven't received anything on grants for that or any, I mean, and yeah, so that's just a nice, that's a future project that could get done in 20 years. It's just on the list because it's there. And same thing with the roundabouts, right? We've submitted. Be great to have. Would have been great if MoDOT would have just gave us the money to do it when we took those over, but that didn't happen.
Rick, and again, the assumption that in our sales tax projections, do you have you say conservative flat. Do you have an idea yet of what that percentage is? Is it just following last year's projections?
This year we are
This year,
slightly above.
Right. But I mean, and that's good. I'm just saying for next year, you mentioned,
Next year,
yeah.
Right now, we have our revenues for sales tax at flat.
Okay. I just was curious what that description of flat
And
meant.
that's one thing that also,
Holding steady.
we'll have our 9-month budget review in August. That'll give us right now 2 more months of information to be able to look at to help understand what we might be looking at there, because we are at flat now.
I
We're
know.
slightly up, but the slightly is, we're meeting budget, right, Rick?
We're meeting budget on. all
Which
of
was
those.
3% growth.
Which was.
And I know in the past, Alderman Wilson's had us budget even flat on property tax, and we've always come above the budgeted number. So it's good to budget flat, and exceed it.
Right.
So
It's not
we've
a
always done something
practice
similar.
We want to continue
Yeah.
year after year.
I'm wondering if we should really look at like 180th and Eagle Parkway as 2 separate projects instead of lumping them together.
That's the roundabout or
The
the
roundabout, yeah.
one's engineering, one's construction.
This just says construction down here at the bottom.
That's just that one intersection.
You're saying 180th, okay.
Yeah, they got.
That's the
I'm
one
thinking,
going-
I'm
that's the
thinking
one
of
going to
Eagle
the lake.
Parkway, because 180th is one and Eagle Parkway is another one.
Yeah,
It's 2
you're talking
different intersections.
180th and Old Jefferson Highway.
Right,
Yeah, and then
As
Eagle Parkway is
one,
the one.
and Eagle Parkway's out by the golf course,
Yeah.
closer to the golf course.
Yeah.
So when you're saying 180th
Yeah, I think
and
that,
Eagle Parkway, should we split those into,
is it one
looking at
roundabout or two,
180th
Chuck?
and Okay.
Is that the
Well, I'm
one at
just
the-
curious, when you're saying 180th and Eagle Parkway, that's two different intersections
Is that
there.
is that the golf course entrance or is it the where Old Jefferson
Jefferson
Highway and
Highway is.
180th intersect?
Yeah, that's when it needs to be.
Made by Greyhawk. So are you talking,
Yeah.
okay, so then it's not Eagle Parkway, it's Old Jefferson.
Okay,
So it's, you're talking, it's gray, what's where Greyhawk and Harbor View intersect, yeah. And then the one for Greyhawk and what is it, Porter or
Porter, I think.
Bridgeport, that one's already, that's a developer has to construct that. We've already done engineering on that one. That's done, yeah.
so I think that just needs to be reworded 180th and Eagle Parkway. Okay. Because that's what I was thinking, well, if that's both
Yeah.
of them, why not split them? So,
Jefferson.
oh, Jeff,
Well, it should be Old Jefferson Highway, not Eagle Parkway.
Now, again, this is 5 years out.
right.
There's a lot of things that it's gonna happen, not if, it will happen. So looking short term, 26, 27, this is just gonna be one fund that finance will keep an
Yep.
eye on. Make sure that we're, especially when we start getting into fiscal 26, we start looking at sales tax and seeing how it's coming in.
Do we have an idea when the mayor touched on it about the Bridgeport, do you have idea when they want to, well, when the developer wants to start working on that on the Bridgeport and Jefferson Highway?
Depends on when they sell the houses.
So that, so, okay, so we're looking like beyond the 5 years, you think? Jack, we don't know.
Depends on how fast houses sell.
I guess that what I'm thinking of is if they do, if it does happen relatively quickly, while they have the equipment there, maybe we can work jointly with the developer on getting some of this, kind of combining. They're right next to each other, is looking at some kind of synergy there, but I mean, that sounds like we're pretty far out. Okay, thank you.
I do want to also point out, we had conversation in the transportation sales tax. Some of these projects have funds from multiple locations. First and Bridge Street Roundabout is one of those, and that's $1 million we have plugged in this budget. So if we push that, it affects this as well. So that helps.
And the engineering's not gonna, I mean,
Delay.
yeah, even if we started working on the engineering, it's not gonna change a whole lot, but also I've seen PDFs out there of development on the Smithville Plaza too, that could change how that looks too, so we can cross that bridge when we get there, but
Rick, this is just a question. As new businesses look to come to Smithville, for example, we've got one in, I believe, the shopping center looking at, is there any way you can work with them to kind of figure out what they think their revenue projections will be for sales tax? Does that, I mean, help you at all in projecting in the future?
We have those
Because,
discussions.
right.
We have those discussions internally. In my mind, it's hard to start thinking of those funds coming in and when we think they would come in, only because these projects, whether they're our projects or somebody else's project, they're just getting delayed.
no, I get it. I get it. I'm glad you're having those conversations though.
When
Yeah.
we hear of a new business coming in, our first thought is this a high sales tax or is this a service? So we are thinking of that.
I wouldn't budget anything yet.
No.
No, not, I just was making sure he's thinking about it
well,
and
the first
talking.
remittance hit
yeah.
the bank and then we talk.
But I mean, you're going to assume too, when you talk about flat growth, you're going, okay, we're not going to get any more businesses. I mean, we're hopeful in growth that we're going to get some revenue, sales tax producing businesses over the next few years too.
And, hopefully we're not flat either.
Right,
We
right.
you got the economy, you got a lot of things happening. It does sound like, they start lowering interest rates. I don't know if that'll, trigger a little more purchasing. But that sounds like September might be our first cut. So, hopefully we're gonna be looking at flat until the very end and then make a decision. All right, moving on to Park and Stormwater Sales Tax Fund. Looking at the 25 projects, all of these are anticipated to be completed in 25. We have the OK Trail Railroad, Dundee Road improvements, and for the engineering, and the Forest Oaks stormwater improvements for the engineering. We do expect all these to be completed in 25.
If Matt can ever get around the water issue. Do we find the well that's leaking the water yet? I, looks like an old farm well. But you never know. I mean, I saw their construction equipment's out there. And we shut down the thing for a little bit, right? It's
Yeah, they set the meter vaults
okay.
today. And then they started working on lowering the water, the main water line that goes into the splash pad. To hopefully get a better footing for services. They added gravel and had equipment go over, but there still is a leak somewhere. And the worry is that it could be under the splash pad. That is causing the soil to stay wet. So,
Fine.
Yeah.
What is
but the water
park?
should be back on the splash pad by Friday
Okay.
from the contractor.
Okay. And it's got shade now. So some.
Better than none.
But you got water. There you go.
All right, looking at the proposed 5-year CIP for the parks and stormwater, so that's fun. A few highlights. The first two are increases in costs that we have recognized. And then the Smith Fork Park Complex Engineering and Design, that was all in 27, 640,000. We have split that to start beginning in 26. We understand that this is gonna be a very large project cost. And so we decided the quicker we get into engineering and design, the better we'll have an idea if we can phase this. If there's any ideas that will come out of both that engineering and design phase. So that is the other change for urban stormwater. And before, I'm gonna flip just to the chart real quick. That chart does go below zero during the construction of Smith Fork Complex.
And as you all will recall, we were trying to build up a balance to be able to address those Smiths Fork needs. Since we see that the balance and costs aren't tracking, we talked at a prior meeting about moving those expenditures up for the design to help us, as Rick said, identify ways we can phase the project, prioritize certain phases, and continue to chip away at that as funds come in. We also anticipate that being a process that we may look at, and as we'll review with the board as we get into it, and we've had prior conversations, a design build process, which would have the engineers manage that construction process, and that helps kind of value engineer the project, for lack of a better term.
All right, I probably don't need too much guidance on this fund. We will be doing a lot of in-depth reviews once we start getting the engineering and design done.
But we do want to make sure the board understands and is okay with that process of kind of moving up, splitting up the design and looking at it in a way different than what we've done in the past to help address those costs.
Yes.
Okay.
I want to ask a question just in general. I see like stormwater improvements and stuff, and we're going out to 2030. I'm just concerned why I'm not seeing Diamond Crest on here, and we know we've got that issue with what we found out there with the storm drains, or whatever you want to call them out there, about just being held up by blocks and stuff. At what point does that become part of this?
Or is it just a different fund than the stormwater?
How will that be taken care of?
We'll just do that as a maintenance project.
Okay.
These are capital projects.
I
that-
just want to make sure that that's not big enough that it had to be here.
No, I don't
Okay.
think it is.
Okay.
No, we'll address those internally. Yep.
Anthony is screwed, just knock them out as part of commodity budget.
I volunteer Anthony for everything.
Yeah. That's what I heard, is Anthony's just gonna go fix it. So yeah.
being missed.
Just wanted to make sure it wasn't a big enough project that it should be addressed
I
here.
hope it doesn't cost $1 million to
I
fix
know.
those boxes.
I know.
Not very many of them. Do they have their, do they have their fish, do they have their fish logos on them? You can do that too while they're out there. Marv knows how to do it. He's kidding.
All right. The Park and Stormwater Sales Tax Fund does have some unfunded CIP projects. Those are Heritage Park, slated for 2030, Helvey Park, Wildflower Park, and Smith's Fork Park again with the destination playground, camping, shelters, and trail. So one of the things on Smith's Fork, I think when we start into the engineering and design of that, we need to look at the stuff that's revenue generating first. Because some of the things that are amenities aren't getting used now. And if we go build a bunch of sports courts, they're just gonna sit empty, and the campground has a demand and the shelters have a demand. And the destination playground helps drive that demand. And that could help fund some of those other, basketball court that's used once in a while. So I think that might help fund some of that other project, because are we sold out this weekend again?
Yes,
And you're way ahead of occupancy from previous years.
way ahead.
So if we get the campground knocked out first or expand on camping versus tennis courts or pickleball courts that are not gonna get used, I think it'll help fund some of those other amenity things. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, these projects here are towards the last of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. They're the long-term.
I get that, but I
projects.
think we should look at flipping the Smiths Fork stuff to
Absolutely.
revenue generating first. Cause your shelters are getting rented more and more too. I'm seeing
Every
more,
weekend.
yeah.
Yep.
So I think if we look at the revenue generating stuff, it might help fund some of the amenity stuff. If we were booked out on baseball fields every week, I'd say look at that first, but we're not. We're not fully booked on any of that amenity stuff.
Looking at all the funds proposed 26 to 30, we kind of went through this in the beginning. This is just kind of in summary. We have a total of just over 66 million in those 5 years. If you remember from looking at the cash flows that we've done for water and wastewater, as well as outside funding, those projects, that project list is close to 70 million. That is due to us including 2025 projects in there. So that's about 4 million for the 2025 projects. So that gets you up to that 70 million roughly. But this is our project list as it stands for the next 5 years, total cost.
Park, we have sunset on parks, right? 38?
Yeah.
2038, 2040, is it? We passed it in 2020, right? Was it 20 or 25 year? So we got, okay. But capital improvement, there's no sunset, and transportation, there's no sunset, so.
All right, just kind of concluding here. We definitely have some project costs that have increased, which is obviously raising concern on fund balances. That's why I wanted to focus on board priorities, kind of talk about how projects don't necessarily get completed in the same year we have them listed. We will manage that as closely as possible. The city has prioritized the reimbursements. We're looking at those projects, and we're also looking at increasing our reimbursements. And then we talked about our little back and forth on each one of these funds and the projects that were included. And we will kind of, Chuck and I and Myra kind of meet about every other week on CIP, just kind of updating numbers. We'll continue to do that, highlight any changes that we find in the next month or two. Any other questions?
No, Rick, I think you're doing a great job, and I wish there was a real-time way to keep up with sales tax, but I know there's typically about a 30-day delay.
More like a 90.
30 to 60.
Yeah,
30 to
60 is
60,
closer
so-
to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it just,
Sell something on July 1st, the city will probably see the sales tax in October.
yeah, that's
Because
the
a lot of,
unfortunate
there's a
part
lot
about
of
it.
quarterly filers, so July, August, September get lumped into the October payment, and then we see it in October, November.
And if they file timely,
Yes,
or if they do, amend their returns, we can see sometimes changes in what we should see. And a lot of times it's due to, vendors amending their returns in prior years. All right.
you go to Price Chopper on Friday and the shelves are empty, they had a good week, and we'll see that in August.
Switching gears, back in April, during the board retreat, the board directed staff to explore options for a sidewalk replacement program in the downtown area. So in response, here's some ideas of what this could look like. Our current residential sidewalk program includes a 50-50 share cost share with residents of a selected area. So every year we will choose a neighborhood and then identify some areas. Then we work with the residents, we coordinate with them, and then we implement this program. Every year, based on the available budget, we have a specific amount, and we work the improvements based on that budget, available budget. So the city will pay for 100% of issues that are caused by stormwater infrastructure or manholes, all those. Also, if we need to add ADA ramps, the city is also responsible for that. Everything else that is in front of people's property, we do 50-50% share. Okay. So for the downtown, maybe I can move it. For a program in the downtown area, a potential option could be to use the Central Business District B4 zoning layer, which includes a combination of businesses, some residential, and some multifamily. But we can use this as a boundary of the downtown area, in a fair way to select the area. And this program will help identify and resolve sidewalk hazards, just like the residential sidewalk program. This will provide cost share opportunities for eligible repairs. To be consistent, we can use similar rules than the residential sidewalk replacement program, maybe the same cost share, and also same inspection procedures. So this program will focus on hazard issues, tripping hazards, vertical offsets, or excessive slopes. If we find small cracks that don't create an offset or a step, probably we wouldn't include those, at least at the beginning. Also, if driveways need to be repaired, those wouldn't be eligible for this program. So it will be mainly sidewalks, ADA ramps, and what we have a lot in downtown is where the sidewalk becomes a driveway. I think there is something we can do there to make it more accessible. Won't be an ADA accessible, but at least will be more manageable if somebody had a wheelchair or a stroller or in some type of car. Now, estimated cost. So we have identified more than 30 issues in the downtown area. And an estimated cost will be $120,000. From this 120,000, 50% would be the city responsibility. So that means, like in this picture, it's caused by city infrastructure. Also, a portion of it will be to add ADA ramps. From the other 50%, this will include sidewalk issues like this one that will qualify for a 50-50 share. So if we were to move with this 50-50 share, the city will have 60,000 for city only plus about 30,000. So it would be $90,000 to implement this program. And the other 30,000 would be on owners. Okay, so funding options. One option could be to do this in phases. You know, based on the available budget, we can designate a certain amount, and just like we do with the sidewalk replacement program, and do every year a little bit. And those owners that in the selected areas, you know, will do the 50 share. Another option, and do this throughout, I don't know, 3-4 years, I don't know, it will depend on the budget. The other option is to maybe explore creating a community improvement district in the downtown area. For this, we'll have to coordinate with Main Street District, because business owners will have to have the initiative. Good thing is that with the revenues, we could use, we could improve more than just the sidewalks. We could use this for other improvements as well. At this point, based on the estimated cost and other needs in the budget that you just heard, staff would recommend that we maybe explore the CID option. Maybe not for 26, because we are already working on the 26 budget, but maybe something for the 2027 budget. And where we go, so maybe we internally do more research, and then we bring it up for discussion with the board and see what you.
And when we talk about research, the establishment of a CIP and working with the Main Street group would take some time in ensuring that we would go through that process in the appropriate manner. One thing to keep in mind, some of the areas that we looked at here were residential. We would want to ensure that this would be for commercial only, and the CID would cover commercial only. We've started bouncing this idea only for the last week or so as we looked at this, and would want to spend some time, and have reached out to Megan Miller, and she could provide some assistance in CID development. There would be a vote of property owners in that process required. And we can, if this is something the board would like to explore further, we can put something together even as we get through the budget process and like this fall, and bringing something forward for what that would look like.
A question, in the 50-50 with the resident and the city, are the resident required to use the city for the sidewalk replacement?
No.
Or they just ask for reimbursement once it's done? Is that how it works? No?
The way it works is we identify an area, even the way we do it in residential right now, the residential program. We send them a letter with the estimated cost. They sign it and say, yeah, I would like to enroll in the program. I gather all the letters. Once I have everything, everyone has accepted, or so far nobody has said no, to be honest. Then we hire a contractor, and in this year, we're gonna use the streets crew. Once the project is completed, so construction is done, then I send them a bill. Because in the previous years, I used a contractor, so I send them an estimated cost. So once I got a bill, then I was able to say, yeah, this is the actual cost. So far, I was very conservative, so maybe 1 year was a little bit less, for by $1 or so, a few dollars. Last year was right on what I predicted that it was gonna be. So this year, I'm hoping, since we're gonna do it in-house, it may be cheaper. So that's the process. People pay after the project is completed. It's not a reimbursement, then we get reimbursed.
So if they want to hire their own contractor, they can do that. If they want to do it themselves, they can do that. But it's not cost shared. We're only
They
cost,
do it at their cost.
we're only
100%.
cost sharing that
Okay.
projects that we know are
Okay.
getting done correctly.
And even if they wanna do it themselves, they have to have a permit. The contractor has to have a license, and we will send an inspector to make sure, just like anything done in the right of way, we need to make sure it's done properly.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to look more at the CID, definitely explore that for the downtown area.
Yeah, I'm with Alderman Kabowski. I think a CID to explore that. Chuck, when we look at this, do you wait until there's a need that we address a sidewalk if there's a stormwater issue, or do we I guess you're calling it a maintenance issue. If there's something that's kind of caving in or not looking, do we kind of prioritize that as a city as far as maintenance and address it as
We
issues
would,
come up?
we'd take a look at that beforehand. We don't want to build a new sidewalk over something that's gonna just settle again. So if we know there's an issue there, we'll address those first.
We don't just throw plywood over it and pour concrete. I mean, we
Mm,
found that over there.
Good
when
idea.
I mean, we found that at a couple spots when we were taking on old stuff, you know. Not a good idea. Or just burying an ice house or a cistern, you know, just cover it up. Yeah, we want to do it the right way. That's
why
encouraging.
sometimes I just wanted to ask, since you guys did that. Sometimes you're in the school and say, hey, this issue, in Harborview, well, sometimes to fix that, we'll have to invest a lot more money. It wouldn't, and that's why we just don't mess with it in the sidewalk program. Where the intention is just to fix like the high priority, really bad tripping hazards.
We're not fixing culverts.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we good with staff going, looking at the CID? I know some of the downtown building owners have asked about it in the past for tuck pointing and other things too, so.
And so then board okay on that, but that be something that we kind of focus on this fall, develop a program and roll that out and really focus on that for the 27 budget?
That's
Please.
good.
Great.
It's water, wastewater, water and wastewater. Is this Rick and Dave and Chuck?
Rick, Dave, Chuck, Jack.
Jack? Well, Dave, step up to the mic so you can, Matt left you a seat. You can sit at his seat. Now we
And
got
I'll
the
also
microphone.
note that Todd Goffey from Piper Jaffrey is here in case
Oh, I
we have
saw
any
him
questions
sneak
as
in.
we talk about that. You
He's
saw
not
him
very-
sneak in?
he's
He's
not
not
very
very
sneaky.
sneaky, I know. But he's also here, so any financial questions that we have then as well, and thinking about particularly since we'll be talking about COPs.
All right. Tonight we'll be going over the combined water and wastewater budget for 2026. This fund has quite a few projects that gets ran through it. And then also this is the fund that we've highlighted, starting in the beginning of this year, that we will be looking for some external financing. So just kind of starting off here real quick.
That's pretty.
On the left there is some aging cast iron pipe and I don't know if you wanted to say that, but and then to the right there is the new PVC going in to replace what we're finding in those cast irons. Another couple big projects that department has taken over is that first one on the left, which is slip line. That's it. And then on the right, that is cleaning and rehabilitation of the manholes. All right, looking at some water and wastewater history here. What we did here is we have 23 actual, 24 actual, and 25 adopted. I was immediately drawn to that $38,000 number. That is after the auditor's adjustment has been done, moving a lot of those projects that are still work in progress to a construction work in progress account. In 23, there was roughly about 850,000 of expenses. They just weren't completed in 23. So getting just a little comparison there. Now, just like we did with the other department budgets, we've added a baseline columns for 25 and 26. In 26, we do have the personnel line. We did make some assumptions based on what we do know, so that is a little higher than 25. But as you go down the line there, you can see that capital projects line has shot up quite a bit. And this is one of the bigger reasons we will be looking at external financing.
Hey, Rick, on that last slide, what was the
Yep.
big drop in contracted services in 2026 baseline?
In 2026.
Yeah.
A lot of that has to do with engineering. A lot of the project engineering gets ran through that. For 26, it could just mean that we've moved it to some of the sales tax funds. So,
Okay, thank you.
you bet. And just like the other departments in water and wastewater, we're gonna talk about a few items that are in the base and items that we are requesting to be put into the budget. This is where I get to hand it off to Dave behind me. He's not behind me, he went over there.
I'm beside you. Okay, so in the operating budget included in the base, the first three items, item number one is the UV light and wiper replacement. It's mandatory. Strawberry Hill Lift Station rehabilitation. You'll see in the pictures, it's an older station that has not had anything done to it in its whole lifespan. And the number three is the addition of two more SCADA boxes, they're call-out boxes for our sewer lift stations. Yeah. Thank you. So the first item is the UV lights and wiper replacement. The UV lights have a manufacturer's lifespan of 10,000 hours. Roughly, that puts it every 3 years, we have to do a full light replacement. And that is to eliminate E. coli in our discharge, we discharge to the river. If ineffective lights will not eliminate the E. coli, resulting in state violations. So the next one is Strawberry Hill. This station was installed in 2001. The pumps that are in the station, although they're working, they do not make these pumps anymore. So this has to be retrofitted with new pumps. The piping is old cast iron. It's had leaks that we've done repairs on. Serves approximately 50 homes. So it's has a handful of people on it. Luckily, it hasn't been a big problem yet. The next. And there you go. And the SCADA boxes, the call-out boxes for the pump stations. It's very helpful to us, especially rain. We can log run times to see if there's issues. We can kind of catch problems early on. But they call out the instant the station has a problem. If there's a power outage, it calls out immediately. So it's very helpful for us to respond quickly to a pump station if it has an issue.
Dave, how many of our pump stations have that now?
I think we have 17 of the 31. And the bad part is that the older ones are becoming obsolete, so we have to replace the current ones now due to changes in cellular service.
Hey, Dave, when you say call out, who does that go to and how does that process work?
So it actually calls, we have an on-call phone that the person on call carries. Then the person on call has a city cell phone that they're required to carry. So it'll call the on-call phone first, the city issued cell phone next, then the on-call phone again, then my phone. So it's pretty lengthy, but it gets the point across. So it's very nice to have.
The problem is when one of these lift stations go down, it's going in somebody's basement. So we want to know as quickly as possible so we can get out there and address the problem.
And that water's not very clean. That water's not very clean that's going to
Is
their
it
basement.
15? Yeah. Is it 15,000 per box or 15,000?
That'll get us two. I started
Okay.
up to 15,000 just to start getting replaced, and if we have, all new pump stations will come with one. So, and we're hopefully in the next few years, we'll be deleting like 3 of them, so that lessens how many we have to get.
Right. Yeah, no, it sounds like a fantastic idea to have for our citizens.
It's very, very handy to have.
Either way, you're getting a call, either somebody's house or the SCADA system.
Yes.
Yeah.
I usually get the call, so.
Hey, a question on the UV lighting. If we know we need to replace them 3 years, should we just put it in the budget every year to budget a third of them so that the third year we have all of them? I mean, just, you know what I mean? So we have it every year.
Yes, it's a mandatory item, so,
Okay.
it would be in the budget.
It's on-
Highlighted that, but that's one of those things that we just.
Yeah, we can't do a third because they were all bought at the same time when the plant was done. They don't burn out, they just run. It's like, yeah, it's not a. Yeah.
Right. And this is highlighting those things. These are just ongoing maintenance that have to occur. And we want to make sure that you see those costs that go into maintenance of the system, because the combined water and wastewater system is a capital improvement fund, but it's also an operating fund. And so there are a lot of things that have to happen, and there are some of these things that just, they are like contractual increases. They go up and they have to be repaired.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Questions?
Just not process sewer a third of the day and make them last a little longer, right, Chuck? Just turn them off for a little bit. It wouldn't smell too bad, right?
I was gonna say, we don't want to have a Netflix special on. Like the cruise line.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Been said.
Smells bad. All right, moving on.
Okay, so the next items are requested items for 2026, and let's see, for an added 250,000. Go to the next one. I'll just go over each one. The first one is the Rain Tree water line. In the past, there's a creek crossing. It's not ideal. Anytime something happens in this creek crossing, it usually explodes, causes longer outages. The pipe is exposed in the creek, and it has been for years. We can't really cover it up. The water washes it away. And whenever there's a leak here, and unfortunately, it does kill water to the winery. So one time we had a massive leak that we had to shut off, and they were in the middle of batching wine. And I got an earful from Galen about that. So unfortunately, there was nothing we could do. We had to shut it down. So ultimately, we would like to replace it with fuse pipe with no fittings. It can be bored underneath the river at a decent depth, and things washing down the creek won't affect it. And it'll have an isolation valve on each side. So if something were to happen, we would not be, if we had to shut it down, we wouldn't kill service to any customers. The next one is the Great Sewer Jetter. We purchased this sewer jetter, I think it was 0405. It was a demo model that had been toured around the United States. We've made it work. It's a great machine. I don't have too many complaints on it, but it is getting old. Repair parts are harder to find. They can be found, but downtime is longer with this old of a machine. Newer machinery, newer parts, easier to get, so should last for quite a while. And we've maintained it well enough that the street department can get good use out of this jetter to clean storm drains. It should work perfectly fine for them. It is an older piece of equipment, so trade-in probably is not enough to trade it in. Probably get more use out of it from the street department.
That's great.
Just real briefly on that, we've been requesting this, I think, since I started here, 5 years. Dave continues to maintain and limp along ours, but again, this is a piece of equipment. If there's a backup and it's in your basement, that sewer jetter is needed now. It's not an hour to go get a rental, especially in the middle of the night when we couldn't get one. It is needed now. So it is an important piece of equipment, but I know it's expensive, so.
Yep.
Okay, the next one is the wet well aerators. We got 3 of these last year. Actually, we squeezed in a 4th somehow. They let us keep the demo model they let us use. So we got 4 out of the deal. These are great. I can't hit enough on how well it eliminates grease. This station in picture, the picture on the left was when we installed the aerator. This diffuser is probably 70 pounds and has hoses on it. You have to drop down the well and run it from chain. It would not go through the grease. I had to pick it up and drop it to make it go through the grease. The next day is the picture on the right.
Wow.
It
That's
eliminated the
impressive.
grease, run times got better on the pump station. We will not have to pay roughly, I think it's about $2,500 to pay Ace to come and vac this station out. So these things are great. So I'd really love to get some more of these. They install easy. We install them within 30 minutes and it helps with so many different things, eliminating grease and toxic gases. They're pretty great.
So if you drive by the pump station, you smell some odor, it probably doesn't have a wizard in it.
Maybe most of them you don't won't smell because they're sealed up, but
Yeah. Just gotta change it to wet well wizard and everybody will like it.
well, the muffin muncher, I found a video on that. That thing's weird. But apparently people use them, so. Yes.
No, you call it what it really is. People aren't buying it.
Just saying.
I have on just, you can hold on to them all. There's just 2. Just jumping in here for a couple slides here.
Those are normal size scissors, by the way. Never mind, Chuck.
Never mind.
All right, just highlighting, we just talked over 250,000 of requested items. That number just went into the capital projects line item, raising that to just under 8.9 million. What I do want to highlight for sure on this slide is we've talked in the past that each department, and this can go to many companies outside of a city as well. Your personnel is usually your highest expense. Anywhere from 65 to 75 to 80% is typical. With these projects that we have listed, our personnel as a percent of total budget is down to 11%, with the capital projects up at 62. So we have a lot of stuff slated for 26, and we thought that was a good slide to kind of show how much projects we have going on.
I think Dave said during our retreat that if we weren't spending this money on capital improvement, we'd need a couple more people just to keep up on breaks and maintenance by now,
Repairs.
right?
Right.
So gotta spend it. We don't want to pump out pump stations every month.
All right, the next slide, just a transition slide here, with Chuck. This leads into Chuck talking.
Good evening. Maybe not. All right,
Wrong button. Other button.
left. We wanted to briefly give you guys a brief review of our master plan, our water and wastewater master plans. Just to give you some idea that we're following all the plans, all the projects that we've completed and stuff come from this master plan. So our water master plan was completed in 2018 and our wastewater master plan in 2021. The 2026 comprehensive plan was the community plan for development that we used to build those 2 wastewater and wastewater master plans. Some things master plans are. Master plans are basically an evaluation of our existing infrastructure, including our distribution and collection systems, our plants, capabilities and conditions and capacities. The master plan will recommend improvements to be made related to growth and regulatory requirements. And then the city takes the 30,000-foot view from the master plan and develops their capital improvement program that meets the needs of the community. Did I jump to or one? One of the main goals of the wastewater master plan was to reduce the number of lift stations. We've got 31 currently. There were also several collection system projects recommended that included like the Owens branch. That's a gravity system for capacity from basically for the north of Smithville. Phase one would extend from the wastewater plant up to Hillcrest Drive. We're currently in design of phase one, segment one. It's a $6 million total project, and we broke it down into segments, 1, 2, and 3. But the first segment is from the wastewater plant to KK. That's currently in design. We expect to have that ready to bid next year. Knocking on wood. The South Booster Pump Station, that's also known as 144th Street Pump Station. Right now it's under construction, as you all know. It's to increase capacity to southern Smithville. We are also decommissioning the Hills of Shannon Pump Station with that project. And we will be able to, once it's done, decommission the McDonald's and Platte Valley Bank lift stations. So there's 3 lift stations that we can take care of with that. It also allows for the interceptor, the Rocky Branch interceptor, to be built from Forest Oaks, so we can take that system off of the Kansas City system. The Stonebridge lift station, which we are currently working on, when it's completed, we'll be able to eliminate the daycare lift station. Right now, it is in design, but we have that design on hold. There's a potential development to the east of the school, and we are talking to the developer about how we can service that area and any additional costs that the development might be responsible for. So we're trying to get that figured out first before we just, we don't want to build in isolation, end up with Stonebridge and then another pump station if we don't need to have one. But the way it's looking, we will probably proceed, and then the development will have to figure out a different way. But anyway, that's kind of where that is. Ultimately, 2038, the master plan made some recommendations for First Creek and Wilkerson Creek. Those are big interceptor lines that will help feed to the south. And then what we need to talk about, direction, is the wastewater treatment plan. Our design capacity is 1.125 million gallons per day. We are currently at 1 million gallons a day, average daily flow. We've had 2 recent developments, Clay Creek and Fairview. When they're fully developed, they will probably exceed our plant capacity. And so we are working with HDR. Right now, we are doing the facility plan. We started that a few months ago. It's the first step for plant expansion. And it's the first step so that we can at least apply for a state revolving loan fund funding. That's in March. When we get to the 2026 proposed CIP, you will see in Rick's presentation that we are proposing to move the wastewater plant engineering to next year. So we can get this bid in 27. As you can see, design, construction, it's 3 or 4 years. We've got capacity now, but as these developments want to continue to come in and develop, this is that Chick-fil-A thing I said, we don't want to say no because we haven't planned ahead. So we're almost behind the 8 ball. So we need to speed up the plant improvement and expansion project. So on the water plant, on the water master plan side, yes. So we're doing really good at water supply wise. Smithville Lake, that's where we get our raw water. We have plenty of water rights. In fact, we're working right now. Originally, remember how many million gallons of, or acre feet that we had in the original agreement, and we've asked the Corps to reduce that because we pay for every acre foot of storage that we have to keep. So we've asked to reduce that. We have the agreement almost agreed to. We haven't been, they knew this several years ago. It was submitted 2016, 16. So they've reduced our payments. We just haven't had the agreement. So we're working on getting the agreement done.
Yeah, quickly, I think it was requested in 2016. We got notification in 2020 that we had been approved for that reduction, and we're still working through the contract. Yes, yes, it was in 2020 ARPA. Mhm. Yeah, and so we're still working to get that contract.
But anyway, on the supply, Smithville Lake has plenty of water to supply Smithville. The raw water pump station we completed in 2023. That gave us, I mean, our old pump station, if you remember, it was little. We've got big, beautiful lift station now. It's even got capacity to put in an additional pump, which we don't need right now. And we included zebra mussel control with a copper ion generator. Our supply line from the wall, from Smithville Lake to the water plant is plenty sufficient to supply all the water that we need for years to come. Our distribution system, we have 3 pressure zones, and we've been working on the recommended improvements to make sure that we get the right capacities, the right pressures to all those zones. The Main Street water line's been completed. That was a 12-inch water line that replaced an 8 down Main Street. We are working on the river crossing that will help feed the North Tower. And we've replaced a lot of old mains. Rick showed you a picture of the interior of one. I think you've seen some that I brought in before. I've got a couple in my office. They're corroded and old, but on 4th Street, 4th Terrace, Woods Winter, Quincy Avenue, we continue to do that.
Chuck, I want to reiterate something you said earlier about our water supply. I was recently in some discussions in DC with realtors throughout the country where there are some areas that are out of water. They cannot build more development. So we are very blessed to have it. Now, I know we also have got some things to do, and I'm sure you're going to talk about that, but it is good to have water.
It's good to have water. We are good with our wastewater treatment plant capacity at this point. We have our design capacity is one. That's the wrong slide. Let's go the other way. It's 2.5 million gallons a day. Right now, our average day is 1.3, and we peak at 1.8. So we're doing fine. We are undergoing a new plant maintenance construction project right now. We're getting new lime feeders and carbon feeders, valves and actuators, new filter media, and we finished last year. We finished up with the residual removal from the sludge lagoons. I put the graph up there just to show you when the master plans were done. Population projections in 16 were supposed to be 12,000. Right now should be getting close to, what is that, 16,000. So they were a little aggressive with their population, and then same thing with the water demand. You know, we were looking at 2+ million gallons needed in 2016. We're not even there yet. So we have some capacity. We're doing the upgrades to the plant. We're doing the improvements to the distribution system. So on the water side, supply side, I think we're in pretty good shape. A couple more comments I wanted to make sure. So you will also notice when we get to the proposed CIP, we do have $1 million in there for a taste and odor project in 26. And right now we're doing the lake sampling. We haven't seen much. I think that's in your city manager's report or administrator's report. Much in the way of whether it's organisms or chemicals or whatever that would produce, the geosmins and stuff like that, that would produce a taste and odor yet. But last night on the news, I heard Kansas City's here witnessing some. So maybe our test this week and next week, we may see some of that. but our levels have not been that high. Manganese is another one that causes some taste and odor, so we haven't seen that yet. But we are taking the samples, and if we find something that we can treat, with whether it's granular activated carbon or something else, we have $1 million proposed in the 2026 CIP to potentially make some adjustments to our system. So I am working right now with HDR also to update our capital construction costs. Just like the population projections, although they were high, our construction costs are low. So we want to make sure we get those up so that we're accurately reflecting, so that, Rick's lost a lot of sleep, and we need to sell some COPs and stuff so we can finance all these improvements. So we're working with them to update the construction costs, population, and water projections that we'll need. And then we are also working on a RFP for a rate study, so that when we get those updated construction costs, we will put those into that rate study RFP, or into the rate study to come up with new rates for 2026. Just want to mention that we aren't planning on increasing the utility rates until after we get the rate study completed, which will probably be the first quarter of 26. And then finally, we just wanted to show if I can, how come it's not moving now? Come on. So just wanted to show how many projects we've completed since 2028 or 2018 to 2024. We have completed over 30 projects for, to make improvements to the infrastructure and the plants, totaling almost $18.7 million in the last, 6 years plus or minus. So we've done a lot of work trying to keep the system functioning. You've heard from Dave before that, all the slip line projects that we've done, the main replacements that we've done, they don't get called out as much as they used to get called out, which is great. We want to make sure the system runs and is reliable. So that's all I had, unless you want some more discussion about master plans.
Anything for Chuck?
Thank you.
Chuck, before you leave, do you think if we weren't slip lining, we'd be over capacity at the sewer plant right now? With all this rain we've had?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to tell, not just the slip lining. When we do the slip lining, we also do the manhole rehab.
Yeah.
All that infiltration is causing problems. I mean, how many gallons did you run the other day when you had that big rain? The holding basins? 2.6 million when we have those rains. So we do have holding basins for, those surcharges and stuff like that. But yeah, so the slip lining, the manhole relining, yeah. And we replaced a few sewer mains. We did the one on Hillcrest, and then we did 4th and 4th Terrace because they were just bad. Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could jump in real quickly here also, we talk about $18 million in the last 6 to 7 years in investment. We've had a lot of conversations around the conference or the table in the conference room that maybe the 7 to 8 years before that, we didn't have that level of investment. That's what we're working with right now. We have spent a significant amount of money and we have a continued significant investment necessary as we've outlined. So that's really what is impacting our need for rates and to continue to review that. And it's a significant system that needs a lot of attention and ongoing maintenance.
Yep.
All right, kind of looking at the CIP, 2025 CIP. For 2025, what is our status in the water and wastewater? Both those top two for the 144th Street, obviously the second one is the federal earmark. Both of these will carry over into 26. We expect a spring 2026 completion. For the Smiths Fork Main construction, we do anticipate a start in 25, but we will have a carryover to 26. Owens Branch, that is in design, and we do expect completion in 25. Maple Ave and River Crossing, we have moved to 26, and we'll see this shortly. Stonebridge Lift Station, the engineering is in design. We do expect this to be completed in 25 and construction in 26. The water plant improvements, we do anticipate this to be completed in 25. And the McDonald's Central Bank Lift Station engineering, we have moved to 2026. Now, looking at the current 5-year CIP for the combined water and wastewater fund. This is, and a reminder, this is the fund where we will be entertaining external financing. In 2026, we have just over 7.5 million of projects slated. In 27, we have 6.8. In 28, we have 4 million. And I say just 4 million, but 4 million. In 29, we have 12.5 million. Oops. And in, I guess I do not have authority on there because this is the current 5-year. We'll be talking about the proposed here shortly after Jack has a little discussion on sewer capacity.
Thank you. This is building on the conversation we've had in the last couple of board retreats related to development growth possibilities, and most of it is sitting on sewer capacity. So in order to discuss it, we wanted to real clear explain what it is. And that is, it's the ability to either convey or to treat the waste. If it's conveyance capacity, that's the lines that get it there, whether it's a force main or it's a gravity line. And that currently we have the North Force Main, which serves all of the north. It's capped at 263 units total after the wildflower improvements are completed, which we anticipate will be done next year. The South Force Main, we're currently under construction with the bypass and the pump station. That'll get us 15 plus years once that's done. And then treatment capacity, as Chuck mentioned a little earlier, that's the waste that we can actually treat through the plant. 1.125, 999,000 or 1 million gallons per day is where we're at. And we've got Clay Creek Meadows and the Fairview apartments are 468 total units. So that'll run that out pretty quick. The north conveyance capacity, I've got a snippet out of the old master plan, the current master plan, excuse me. And if you look, you can see a green dotted line on the left side of it. That's the Owens Branch interceptor that was mentioned earlier. So it's phase 1 of that. And phase 1 is busted into 3 segments. Segment 1 gets us to KK. Segment 2 gets us up and through and up there where KC or Evergy's got their substation. And then segment 3 gets you to Hillcrest. Until that Hillcrest connection is made, we're still capped at 263 units on the north. But once done, it'll open us for capacity for 15 plus years. South conveyance capacity is currently restricted by the South Force Main capacity, but it has some room currently. But the booster and the west bypass will take off that South Force Main capacity issue, and it gives us more capacity through there. And again, that will also give us the ability to do the Rocky Branch interceptor, which would go from Forest Oaks to 144th, and it would open up all of that area to gravity sewers, which would make it more amenable to development.
Jack, can I ask a question?
Sure.
back on your sewer capacity where you talk about units on the north, but on the south you do 15 years. Can you equate that 15 years to units? I mean, I'm just curious how you can say 15 years, and that would depend on developments, right?
Well, yes, and.
Okay.
and on the south, the capacity is, the units will be significantly higher because the housing is significantly different. We're looking at most likely apartment style units. For example, the 13 acres that will be coming to the planning commission next week for site plan will have 252 units on it.
Okay.
So we anticipate growth at a higher rate down there, but we don't know how many units. And we also don't expect any single family detached of substance to go down.
But also, if you-
It's just hard for me to wrap my head around units north and years
Well, and
south.
units north, the years probably, once that's done, that 263 probably gets us 4 years of actual house construction, maybe 5.
but also when Hills of Shannon was platted, it was supposed to have a lot more houses with a lot more toilets
Yeah.
than a 253 apartment complex that might have 253 toilets. Like,
Yeah, so.
there was a lot more laid out that didn't happen. We got a big line going in, a big pump station.
Yes.
Is the hole dug so Melissa can go see? It's a big hole.
And then the
Big
last issue Chuck also touched on a while ago, and that is the wastewater treatment plant capacity. 1.125, we're pushing it now. In 5 to 6 years, we will be at 1.125, clearly. As he mentioned earlier, the 468 units on the 2 that will likely be approved in the next few months will probably push us to capacity in 28, 29 range, depending on how fast Clay Creek Meadows goes. So it's moving quickly up there and down there, but we don't know exactly the time frame. That's why we're trying to get ahead of it. Any questions on what the capacity aspects are for development?
I just have a question, Jack. If there, you talk about units on, and like Melissa mentioned, you talk about units on the north side. If there is a development that comes in, is there a time when we just say, wait, stop, right? And no more,
Absolutely.
no more, nothing, right? And,
Now,
okay, so,
we can preliminary plat 1,000 lots up there. That's fine. We just can't final plat them because final plat them gives them the ability to build and construct the development phase and start constructing the homes. We just don't want to ever be in a situation where we allow a final plat to occur where we won't be able to get enough capacity if it's done.
Well, that's why planning and zoning just pulled the plat for the one subdivision, because we told them they had to do sewer upgrades. They said no, and
Right. Their
It's-
sewer
it's not-
upgrades, the wildflower thing brought in, that would have brought us to where we needed to be immediately, within 1 year. Well, when they delayed it 2 years, it messed everything else up. Because we negotiated the agreements with Clay Creek Meadows and Lakeside Farms with the thought that when Lakeside Farms was done after 1 year, everybody had plenty of capacity for both of them.
but also developers won't even come to us if they know there's not capacity, right? They're not gonna spend the money on engineering if they know we don't have it.
Now, and that aspect of it is where, looking at the master plans and the CIP that Chuck talked about, that's where those come into. When can you anticipate it, Jack? Hear that question all the time. And I just show them the CIP has the Interceptor project getting up to Hillcrest by 29, I think it is. So once that hits, Katie bar the door. We're open for single family detached housing at whatever rate wants to happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
And Alderman Russell, that's why we wanted to present this information, because as we move into the next, that sets the context for the next discussion and timing of number of our projects here, because that ability to approve those permits lies in this capacity.
Right, so after listening to Chuck and Jack talk about the water side, the wastewater side, now I'm gonna go over what we proposed the CIP for the next 5 years is. Again, I have highlighted wherever there are changes where we have identified either a cost increase, an addition, or a change in the year. Looking at 2026, we moved the wastewater treatment plant expansion engineering to 26. It was in 27. And this is a direct result of Jack's conversation here, of getting that going and getting the engineering done as soon as possible. The next two are additions. We have the water and wastewater master plans update. We've talked about that during the retreat. And as Chuck mentioned in his one of his talks tonight, we do have taste and odor control at $1 million, slated for $1 million. Moving on, for 2027, we moved 2 items. Most of the items going forward are going to be related to the Owens branch. We moved those 2 projects, phase 1, line 1, and phase 1 and 3, line 2. We moved those to 2027. The Owens branch gravity line, phase 1 and 3, line 2, we moved from 27 to 28. The Owens Branch Gravity Line Phase 1, Line 2 construction, we moved from 27 to 29. The Owens Branch Line Phase 1, Line 3, we moved from 28 to 29 for 2 million. And then another result of Jack's conversation, we moved the wastewater treatment plant expansion construction from 29 to 27. And as we've mentioned before, these are very large projects. They will span multiple years. So moving on from the general operations of the water and wastewater fund, looking at the water impact fees, we do have the Maple Ave and River Crossing at 700,000 for 26. That has stayed put. For the wastewater impact fees, we moved the Owens branch from 28 to 29. All right, so looking at some cash flows, and again, I've mentioned, this is probably my 3rd time mentioning, this is the fund where we will have the external financing. We brought this to you a couple times in 25. First time was in February, second time was in April. I'm repeating what we brought in April, the cash flow showing that in 2029, based on current projections, we would hit our reserve for this fund. This is not different than the one that we had in February. It was also 2029. We just hit it a little quicker in the revised one in April. Looking at the current cash flow for this fund. Right now, as it stands, we are at 2028. We would be hitting the required reserve. And then moving to what we just proposed. It moves it back to 2029. Any questions on the cash flow before I kind of wrap this up?
Rick, you said you would meet the reserve, we would meet the reserve in 2028 without the debt financing? Is that regardless?
Just debt financing.
Okay.
We're just anticipating out,
With the
like
adjust,
every fund, 1,000 things could change, projects could take longer. We will more likely try to keep the debt issuance in those years, and that'll prevent us from hitting the reserve. So it would be really, really hard for us to get done with 17 million of projects in 26 and $15 million of projects in 27. So. All right, kind of just wrapping up this presentation. I won't read everything that's on here, but I did highlight or make bold the issues that we've kind of gone throughout this presentation. We definitely have a need for significant capital. The projects are now costing quite a bit more. We do hit the current fund reserves in 28, 29, depending on what projected cash flow that you're looking at. There will be a need for external funding to get all of this accomplished. There will be debt service implications. Obviously, we'll have a payment of debt service for quite some time. Impact on rate payers. This is, again, like Chuck said, we are not doing any rate increases. We will wait and see what the rate study says, but we would expect some kind of increases in the future. So this will also require some fund strategy on staff side. This is a combination of getting reimbursements, making sure projects are getting done in the right year. If we need to push anything, engineering or construction to the following year, we will be entertaining that as well. And then, of course, just kind of an overall risk management that we would have here when we're balancing high level of debt along with our financial stability. So, any questions?
I don't have any questions, but thank you. You have a lot to manage.
I do want to thank Rick and Jack and Chuck and Myra and Dave and all of the staff in finance and utilities. This is for the last several months. We've spent a lot of time really digging into and making sure that we could provide as much information as possible about our utilities and those needs and help us move forward. And I think we've developed a solid plan. There's a lot of information. There's a lot still to be done, but I think we've got a good and solid roadmap.
I echo that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Rick's had to endure hours of my grilling on this stuff too, so. So more time on this than most things the last couple weeks. All right. Well, we have an executive session, so I need a motion to adjourn to exec, please.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn to executive session pursuant to section 610.021, 1 and 2, the revised state statute.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Mayor, second.
Clerk, please call roll.
Alderman Hartman,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Alderman Russell,
Aye.
Alderman Stone,
Aye.
Alderman Kibelski,
Aye.
Alderman Atkins,
Aye.
6-0.
And adjourn executive session. We'll be back in a little bit.